Welcome to the deep dive. Today, wow, we're jumping right into something that feels like it's unfolding live. It's this uh, really high-stakes legal and political chess match
Yeah, happening right now.
right in the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey. It's just this fascinating mix of, federal law, executive power, judicial authority, all clashing.
It really is.
So we're going to try and unravel this recent kind of unexpected leadership scramble for the top federal prosecutor job there, which is, a hugely critical role for law enforcement, for justice in the state.
Absolutely critical.
And for this deep dive, just so you know, we're leaning heavily on some excellent detailed reporting, mostly from CBS News. It gives a really comprehensive picture of how things are developing. Our mission, really, for you, is to cut through all the complexity. We want to identify the key players, help you understand the legal gears turning behind the scenes, and, figure out why this whole situation is actually pretty significant for how power works, or maybe doesn't always work smoothly in government.
Yeah. And hopefully give you the essential takeaways without getting bogged down in too much legalese.
Exactly. Clarity fast. So let's dive in. Where does this all begin?
Well, it really starts with the initial appointment. That's what set the whole thing in motion, especially the timing aspect.
Right, the timing. So it kicked off back on March 24th. Attorney General Pam Bondi appointed Alina Habba. Now, she was a former defense lawyer for President Trump, as the interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey.
Okay.
But here's the kicker, the really critical detail. Federal law puts a strict limit on that kind of interim appointment, just 120 days.
And that 120-day clock, as people call it, is just fundamental here. It's not just an arbitrary deadline. No, it's actually designed by Congress. It's meant to be a pressure point, to force the president to act on a permanent nomination.
Oh, okay.
It creates this sort of legal backstop. If the White House drags its feet on sending a nominee to the Senate, well, the power can actually shift.
Shift to who?
To the judiciary, potentially. Now, President Trump had nominated Habba for the full U.S. attorney job. He wanted her in there permanently.
Right.
But that 120-day clock on her interim role, it was ticking no matter what.
Okay, so the clock's ticking down. The president wants Habba confirmed permanently. But then something gets in the way.
Exactly. And this is where this sort of old Senate tradition, the blue slip policy, becomes really important.
The blue slip. Okay, explain that.
Well, basically, for certain nominations like U.S. attorneys, the Senate Judiciary Committee tradition is that both home state senators have to earn a positive blue slip for the nomination to even get a hearing or a vote.
And in New Jersey.
The two senators, both Democrats, Cory Booker and Andy Kim, they opposed Habba's nomination. They indicated they wouldn't return positive blue slips.
So no blue slips, no confirmation process.
Pretty much. It effectively blocked her path to confirmation in the Senate.
Which makes that 120-day deadline for her interim job suddenly loomed very large.
Extremely large, became a hard stop. The easy path was gone.
Okay, so confirmation is blocked. The 120 days are running out. What happens?
Well, with that blockage, the focus really shifts. Other players start to potentially get involved based on the law.
And they did.
Yeah.
So as Habba's 120 days were getting close to expiring, that would be around July 22nd, the U.S. District Court in New Jersey itself, it decided to act.
Which, might sound surprising to some people. Can judges just appoint a U.S. attorney?
Yeah, can they?
Well, yes. In this specific circumstance, there's a federal law, a statute, that covers vacancies in U.S. attorney offices.
Okay.
And it specifically says if the Attorney General's interim appointment expires after that 120-day period, the district court, meaning the federal judges in that district, they actually get the power to appoint a U.S. attorney themselves. And they serve until the vacancy is properly filled, usually through a presidential nomination and Senate confirmation.
So it's like a fallback mechanism.
Exactly. It's meant to, incentivize the president and the Senate to get their act together and fill the role, and also just ensure there is someone leading the office. Prevents it from being vacant indefinitely.
So the judges had this power. What did they do with it?
Well, they met, they discussed it, and the majority decided not to keep Habba in the role, even temporarily through their own authority.
Okay.
Instead, they voted to appoint her own deputy, the first assistant U.S. attorney, Desiree Lee Grace, to take over as U.S. attorney.
Wow. So they bypassed the AG's pick and chose the second in command.
That's right. Chief Judge Renee Baum signed the official order making Grace's appointment effective right when Habba's 120 days ran out.
Has this kind of thing happened before? Judges appointing a U.S. attorney?
It's rare, definitely not common, but it's not unprecedented. We have seen courts use this power.
Where?
Examples include Gregory Forat in New Mexico back in 2008, actually Craig Carpenito right there in New Jersey in 2018.
Ah, so it happened in Jersey before.
Yes. And maybe most famously, Jeffrey Berman in Manhattan, also in 2018. Though you might remember his departure in 2020 was, well, it was messy. Lots of confusion about whether he resigned or was fired.
Right, I remember that. So, okay, the court appoints Grace. How did the executive branch of the Justice Department react to that?
Oh, the reaction was swift and very, very strong.
How strong?
Attorney General Bondi went on social media, and the reporting uses the word excoriated the judges, called their actions rogue behavior.
Rogue behavior, wow.
Yeah, and claimed it threatened the president's core Article 2 powers. Article 2 being the part of the Constitution dealing with executive power.
So really pushing back hard.
Extremely hard. Now, legally, this gets interesting. There's an old 1979 opinion from the Justice Department's own Office of Legal Counsel.
Yeah.
It's not binding law, but it's influential.
Okay.
And it suggested something quite subtle. While the president probably does have the power to remove any U.S. attorney, regardless of who appointed them, the attorney general herself might not have the authority to just fire a U.S. attorney who is appointed by the court.
So a distinction between the president's power and the AG's power in this specific situation.
Exactly. A potentially crucial distinction about who can remove a court-appointed officer.
But did that distinction matter in practice? What did Bondi do?
Well, despite that potential legal nuance, Bondi announced that Desiree Lee Grace, the person the judges appointed, had been removed from her position as first assistant U.S. attorney.
Removed from the number 2 spot, not directly from the top spot the court gave her.
It seems that was the initial move. And then Deputy AG Todd Blanche also jumped in. He stated Grace was ousted pursuant to the president's authority and made it very clear they viewed the judge's decision as illegitimate, calling it a backroom vote that wouldn't override the authority of the chief executive.
So basically doubling down, asserting presidential power over the court's decision.
Absolutely. A direct confrontation.
Okay, so the court appoints Grace, the DOJ says no way, and seemingly removes her. But then things get even more complicated, right? There's another law involved.
Yes, exactly. This brings us to another really important piece of the puzzle. The Federal Vacancies Reform Act of 1998. People just call it the Vacancies Act.
Yeah, how does that fit in? Because it seemed like Habba was out, her interim term expired. The court picked someone else.
Right. And adding to that, until just very recently, Habba didn't even look eligible to serve as an acting U.S. attorney under the Vacancies Act.
Why not?
Because there's a specific provision in that law. It generally says that if a person's nomination for a position has been formally submitted to the Senate,
Which Habba's had back in June.
correct, then that person generally cannot serve as the acting official in that same position while the nomination is pending or if it's been rejected or returned.
So it looked like she was blocked from being the acting head too, because her nomination was technically still before the Senate, even if it wasn't moving.
That was the situation. Blocked from confirmation, term expired, and seemingly blocked from serving as acting. Until President Trump made a really interesting move. Just last Thursday, he formally withdrew Alina Habba's nomination from the Senate.
He withdrew it. That sounds backward. Why would he do that if he wanted her in the job?
But that's the clever part. By withdrawing the nomination, he removed the very thing that was blocking her under the Vacancies Act.
Oh.
Suddenly, that prohibition didn't apply anymore because her nomination was no longer pending.
So withdrawing the nomination actually opened up a path for her.
Precisely. It cleared the way for her to potentially serve in an acting capacity. And the Vacancies Act allows acting officials to serve for much longer, up to 210 days from when the vacancy first occurred.
Okay, so withdrawing the nomination was key. How did they then actually get her into the acting role, given the court had appointed Grace?
It involved a sequence of steps based on the administration's interpretation of the law. First, Habba apparently resigned from her expired interim post. Then, Attorney General Bondi appointed her as the first assistant U.S. attorney, the job Grace had just been removed from.
Right.
And then because the U.S. attorney position was, in the administration's view, vacant, since they didn't recognize the court's appointment of Grace, and Habba was now the first assistant.
She could step up into the acting U.S. attorney role.
That appears to be the mechanism they used, leveraging the Vacancies Act and the first assistant position. It relies on that distinction between interim appointment under one law and acting appointment under another.
Wow, that's intricate.
It is, and it highlights something observers point out what some call a potential loophole in the Vacancies Act.
A loophole, how so?
Well, the Vacancies Act allows for internal subdelegation. Essentially, a lower-ranking official, someone who doesn't need Senate confirmation like a first assistant, can perform the duties of a vacant senior position.
So you can use someone already inside the department to fill the top job temporarily, bypassing the Senate confirmation process for that person.
That's the idea. As Thomas Berry from the Cato Institute put it, subdelegation is so easy to do throughout the executive branch. It gives the administration flexibility.
Have we seen this kind of move elsewhere?
Actually, yes. A similar situation unfolded recently up in Albany, New York. The court there declined to appoint the administration's preferred person, John Sarcone, after his interim term expired.
So what happened?
The Justice Department named him special attorney to the Attorney General and also first assistant, basically using that internal appointment structure to keep him effectively in charge of the office, even though the court hadn't picked him.
So it seems like a playbook is emerging for these situations.
It certainly looks like a strategy the executive branch can employ when facing judicial pushback on appointments.
Okay, so after all of this legal maneuvering back and forth, appointments, withdrawals, where do things stand right now? Who is actually in charge in New Jersey?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? You have conflicting claims.
What are they saying?
Alina Habba posted very clearly on X, formerly Twitter, stating, quote, "I am now the acting United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey." Very direct.
Okay, staking her claim. What about Desiree Grace, the one the judges appointed?
Her position seems a bit more nuanced based on her LinkedIn activity. She apparently updated her profile to indicate she's no longer the number 2, the first assistant.
Right, because Bondi removed her from that role.
Correct. But Grace also stated she is, quote, "prepared to follow that order," referring to the judge's order appointing her U.S. attorney and begin to serve in accordance with the law.
So she's acknowledging the court order appointing her to the top job.
It appears so, and it's worth mentioning, reports indicate Grace is held in very high regard within the New Jersey law enforcement community. We saw supportive comments from figures like Minneapolis Chief of Police Brian O'Hara, who previously worked in Newark.
So you have Habba saying, "I'm in charge," backed by the DOJ, and Grace saying she's ready to follow the court order putting her in charge. A standoff.
Pretty much. You also have differing views from outside observers.
Like who?
Well, Armin Morian, an attorney who worked with Habba previously, was quoted saying he believes she is eminently qualified. He also made an argument that unconventional appointments are sort of par for the course with an unconventional figure like President Trump, basically seeing this as part of Trump's style of shaking things up.
So different perspectives on her qualifications and the legitimacy of the process. But legally, is there any clear precedent for who wins in this kind of direct clash between a court appointment and an executive countermove?
That's what makes this so remarkable. There's actually very little, maybe even no direct judicial precedent on the specific issue of removing an interim U.S. attorney when the AG disagrees with the court's subsequent appointment.
So we're in uncharted territory, legally speaking.
To a large extent, yes. How courts would ultimately rule on the president's power versus the court's statutory appointment power in this specific scenario. It's really an open question. It's evolving as we speak.
Okay, wow. So let's try to pull this together. This deep dive, it's really shown this incredibly tangled dance, hasn't it? Between federal laws, presidential ambitions, judicial authority stepping in, Senate procedures like the blue slip.
Yeah.
All focused on this one really important job in New Jersey.
Absolutely. It's like a case study in real time of how the different branches of government interact, sometimes cooperate, sometimes clash over power and appointments.
It really highlights those checks and balances we always talk about, but also maybe the friction points and the loopholes within them.
Yeah, the stress points in the system become very visible in situations like this.
So we've seen how these different government branches are asserting their powers, really battling it out over who gets to appoint a top federal prosecutor. It leaves us with a big question, really, for you to think about. What does this whole ongoing situation tell us about how checks and balances actually work in our current political environment?
When the written law, past practices, and raw political will collide like this.
What does it reveal about how power is really exercised, how it's contested? What questions does this raise for you?